Good evening and welcome. I'm Dr. Melissa Green. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and registered yoga teacher. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you about something that inevitably will come up during the holidays is how to manage the holidays when you're caring for someone with dementia. And first, I want to talk about just prepping your home for the holidays. Oftentimes, people use lights and decorations and candles during the holidays. And it's important to make sure that when you're using those things that you keep them secured so that your loved one with dementia is not able to move them or take them apart. It's also important to make sure that any cords are not just out in the floor or in the hallways or walkways to decrease the likelihood of your loved one with dementia tripping or falling and injuring themselves. Also, I think the second thing that is important to mention that if you are the primary caregiver for your loved one with dementia, or if you're the person who is more involved in their care, whether you're the primary caregiver or you're supporting caregivers who are coming in from the outside, it's very important that you learn how to set boundaries and limits on what you can do and how you show up during the holidays, because it might look different now that you're caring for someone with dementia, and it's important that you let other people know, friends and family members know, because they may have certain expectations of you that you might not be able to live up to, or that might cause extra burden for you if you try to live up to it. So it's okay to say, no, I'm not able to prepare that dish that I normally prepare, or no, I'm not able to go and help set up the venue where we're having, or the home, help decorate, or to help clean up, to do some of those extra things, because you most likely need to focus your attention more on what's going on with your loved one with dementia. And that can be challenging sometimes, but it's important that you know that it's okay to do that. Also, I would encourage you to make a decision based on what you think is best for you and your loved one with dementia. If you're the primary caregiver or the person who is most involved, do not allow other people to guilt you into making decisions that you don't think are helpful, or that you don't think would be in the best interest of you or your loved one with dementia. And I don't care if it's a family member, if it's a friend, or if it's a healthcare professional or some other professional. Only you know what it is that that person may be capable of doing, or where their limits may be and where your limits may be. And it's okay to tell people no if you decide that you don't want your loved one with dementia to participate in large gatherings. That's perfectly fine. If you decide that you want to have a smaller gathering, or maybe have one or two visitors just stop by, that's fine. Or maybe even consider doing virtual visits. So it's important to remember, and you may have to educate other people in your family, that changing the environment of a person with dementia, just changing that environment abruptly, may cause them to become emotionally dysregulated. It could cause them to become anxious, more irritable, possibly even combative. And so we want to do whatever we can to decrease the likelihood of something like that happening. So, if at all possible, if you can share the holidays or spend the holidays with your loved one with dementia in the place that is most familiar to him or her, that would probably be more helpful and probably decrease the likelihood of any incidents in which that person becomes more irritable. And if you think about it, most of us get anxious and maybe even irritable if we are doing something that we haven't done before, or if we are doing something that we haven't done in a very long time. It's really our nervous system's way of protecting us to let us know that this is something new, so you need to be on alert, and it sends that signal that it needs to activate that stress response, that fight or flight response. So that's not uncommon, but for someone who has been diagnosed with some type of dementia, those feelings and reactions may be amplified, and it may be a lot more difficult to manage those things because they might feel scared. Anxiety really is about safety, right? So there may be some anticipation of something that may happen that could perhaps be dangerous or unsafe, and it's our nervous system's way of protecting us from a potential danger or potential stressor. And when a person who has dementia goes to a place that's unfamiliar, or even a place that they have frequented many times, it might seem unfamiliar to him or her, causing agitation or anxiety. And just know that if the person is responding in that way, it is because of the dementia. If you notice that they're having some irritability or anxiety, if you bring them into a large group. Also, it's important to remember that loud conversations or loud noises could also trigger a lot of anxiety or agitation. So those are things to be mindful of when you're making decisions about what would be the best environment for your loved one with dementia. If your loved one is unable to travel or is too challenging to transport your loved one, you could have other family members to create virtual video cards, virtual video holiday cards specifically, so that you could play the recording on your phone or on the computer or on your iPad, so that he or she could still in some way engage with other people. You might also consider doing something like having everyone watch a favorite holiday movie, and doing it in the place where they are. So the person with dementia may be in one location with the person who is the primary caregiver, and other family members may be in other places, and you guys may have a group chat that you would text each other in about what's going on with the movie, or you may take breaks and do a phone call at different points in the movie, or video call, or at the end talk about it as a way of including that person with dementia. If there are ways that your loved one with dementia can help with preparation, I would encourage you to allow them to do that. If they can help with wrapping, or even do some assisting with helping you prepare a meal, or baking, that may help to trigger some memories about experiences in the past during the holidays, and it might make it more enjoyable for him or her. Now, in the event that you decide to take your loved one to a large gathering, or in the event that a lot of people are coming to the place where your loved one with dementia resides, it probably would be helpful if you shared with people some things about that person that they may not be aware of, or that they may have forgotten because they don't spend a lot of time with that person. For instance, you can remind them that the person with dementia may not really understand, what is socially acceptable, or what's appropriate. They may not remember that. And so they may observe behaviors that seem odd or unusual. The person might be incontinent, and so that may be something that people need to expect. The person could have hallucinations, and they could be hearing voices or seeing things, and they may act in a way that suggests that they are hallucinating. And so that may be something to let family members know, to be aware of if they see that, not to be alarmed. Or they may eat differently. They may use their hands. They may not remember to use utensils. A funny story about my daddy. So a few months ago, it took forever for us to get him out of the place where he lives to go to get new dentures. And so my brother finally got him out, and then he got to the place, and we met there, and I got to the place. Then he couldn't get him to come out of the car. Then he finally got him to get out of the car. And then when I was in the waiting room with him, he was ready to leave and telling me not to fill out the check-in information that was on the iPad. Then we finally got him through the threshold of the door, and then he wouldn't go sit down in the back. And eventually, once he realized he was there for dentures, he was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. I need some new teeth." So he was more cooperative. And so it took all of that effort for us to, coordinate just to get him in the facility. And then after we got them, he wouldn't wear them, right? And one time, the people in the facility where he is told me he was using the dentures as a spoon, right? So, I mean, did I get upset? No, I just laughed. I just thought, well, at least he found a practical use for it, right? So you have to be able to expect the unexpected, basically what I'm saying, and change your own expectations. Otherwise, you will continually be frustrated, and so will other family members. So letting them know, I'm sharing that story because, if somebody else in the family would have heard that story, they may have been very upset about it, or embarrassed, or disturbed, because I spend a lot of time with my dad, and I understand what's going on with him. It didn't upset me. It doesn't upset me that he has these almost $1,000 pair of dentures just sitting on the shelf most of the time. It's just the reality of the condition. And so I'm sharing this story to say that you may need to be very explicit with other family members about things that they might see your loved one with dementia do, or things that that may happen, to alert them beforehand. And you can do that by having a family meeting before a family gathering during the holidays, or maybe send, if you want to do it old-fashioned way, write a letter or send an email, or even just in a group text to say, hey, this is where this person is right now as far as their communication skills, their cognitive abilities, their social skills, and these are some things that you can possibly expect to see. Okay. And also remind people that the loved one with dementia might not remember who they are. If they haven't been around a lot, they may not remember who they are, or they may recognize their face. They may not remember their name. And it's important that they don't quiz them, right? Because that in and of itself can cause the person to become agitated, particularly if they recognize the person's face, or they somehow know that they should know, but they don't know. That could cause a lot of embarrassment, and also irritability, and the person might work hard to try to avoid answering, or they may just get really upset. And so just remind family members that it doesn't matter if Uncle John doesn't remember your name, because that is not the most important thing about this gathering. The most important thing is that we are sharing time together, that we are creating memories, and if that loved one has a problem, or is going to be upset or offended, then maybe they don't need to come. And I know oftentimes people do that with good intentions as far as quizzing. I mean, I am guilty of doing that sometimes too. When I see my dad, I might say, you know who I am? You remember my name? But I have to catch myself, because it really, there's no benefit to him being able to call my name, really, other than making me feel good. And it could have the opposite effect on him. So let's see, other things to be mindful of is that the person with dementia may have difficulty communicating in an efficient way or an effective way. So it's important to remind other family members to be patient, to allow the person to finish, recognize that the person may not be able to hear them well, and so they may have to repeat things that they say. I know that's something that happens a lot with my dad, and I'll say, how are you doing today? Huh? How are you doing today? What? How am I doing? What? I mean, we go back and forth, and I just say, okay, either he hears it or he doesn't after like 2 or 3 times, and then move on to something else. So just letting other family members know that they need to, or that they may need to adjust their expectations of their loved one who has dementia, so that it will decrease their frustration, so that they're not expecting to see a person that they saw 20, 30, 40, 10, 5 years ago, who is not the same person that they're seeing now. And not only would it create frustration, it probably would create sadness and disappointment. So if people are updated on where your loved one is beforehand, it might make for a more enjoyable experience for the family members, also for the person who has dementia, because they're not going to be quizzed and questioned and all of that. Also, if you decide to have a gathering with a larger group of people, and if you decide to bring your loved one with dementia to that gathering, or go to a place, or bring the party to him or her, try to do it earlier in the day, because many people with dementia become more agitated and confused later in the evening. They might experience something that's called sundowning. So if you're able to have a gathering earlier in the day, that would decrease the likelihood of that person becoming irritable or so confused, or maybe combative, and decrease the likelihood of people having to leave early. And that's another thing too, when I mentioned earlier, to expect the unexpected, that if you do take your loved one with dementia to a gathering where there are a lot of people, if you're the primary caregiver, or the person who has more responsibility, you need to be prepared to possibly leave that gathering early if your loved one with dementia becomes agitated or disoriented or confused or combative, or be prepared to give them something that might serve as a distractor to help to soothe them or relax them, like music. I know that is often helpful. It definitely is helpful with my dad. I always play James Brown. I turn on Pandora and play James Brown whenever I go to visit him, and he always lights up. Music and movement can shift anybody's mood. It can shift our mood. So, that may be something to have on hand as a distractor if the person becomes like overstimulated by all of the people and the talking and the movement and all those things that are unpredictable, that might heighten a person's anxiety. If you can take them to another room or out to the car and play music for them, or even show them pictures of people, family members. Sometimes I will take my iPad and show my dad pictures on the iPad of events that he was in, that he participated in before, like his birthday, things that me and my siblings have done with him in the past, and he seems to enjoy that, and he definitely enjoys looking at pictures of himself. So that might also be something that you can do to serve as a distractor if your loved one with dementia is starting to become upset or uncomfortable. Okay. And in closing, if you are starting to feel, you as the caregiver, starting to feel stressed, overwhelmed, upset yourself, then please, please, please talk to somebody. If there's somebody there with you that you feel comfortable talking to, or remove yourself from the situation if you're able to do so. Also, try the strategies that I taught last week in my video. Last week, that video is entitled Mindfulness for Dementia Caregivers. So if you didn't get a chance to watch that, you can go back and look at that. And I taught, I believe, 4 different strategies that are very simple, that you can pretty much do anywhere, and no one would really know that you're doing those. Try those things. And really, it's important if you want to use those strategies that you try to use those all the time, so that you get comfortable with using them, so that when you do actually have to use them in a time that you're stressed, that they work. Anytime I'm working with somebody and I teach them basic stress management strategies, I always say in the beginning, because I know people are going to come back and say that didn't even work. That thing don't even work. Especially when I was working with Marines, and I'm like, yeah, it's not going to work when you're like on 10, right? If you haven't practiced using it. So if you practice using these strategies, just like anything else, you'll get better at it, and you'll get better at decreasing your stress reaction and inducing that relaxation response. So practicing using those strategies. And so in closing, I want to leave you with 5 affirmations that I want you to think about and hopefully use when you're going through your day, just to help you to stay focused on what's important and stay engaged and understand, your purpose in this whole thing. Okay. Let's pull them up. So the first one is, I let go of how my loved one used to be and accept the person they are today. The second one, I understand the changes in behavior and personality are due to the changes in the brain as a result of dementia. I don't hold my loved one responsible for what they say or do. Number 3, I spend time on self-care on a regular basis. I can't pour from an empty cup. And I'm going to read that one again because it's very, very important. I spend time on self-care on a regular basis because I cannot pour from an empty cup. Number 4, I surround myself with loving, caring, and helpful team members and family members to support me on my dementia journey. And number 5, I release myself from all guilt. I know I am doing my best as a caregiver, and feeling guilty is unjustified and irrational. And on that note, I will say good night. I'm Dr. Melissa Green. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and a registered yoga teacher. See you next week. Goodbye.